Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I will start just by recognizing we are in Treaty 6 territory, land that the Métis people share a very deep connection with. My name is Christina Gray. I am the leader of the official opposition in the Assembly, the House leader for the official opposition, and I'm joined with Naheed Nenshi, who is, of course, the leader of Alberta's New Democrats. The corrupt care scandal has grown government-wide, and today we have just learned that the infrastructure minister has resigned. This resignation should have been the health minister, and the premier should be stepping aside for a judge-led inquiry that the public can have trust and confidence in. Now, the infrastructure minister said, quote, "I'm not going to stand by and see potential corruption exist within government and be part of that," end quote. And that is exactly what we are here for, to get to the bottom of this scandal. One of the biggest questions Albertans are asking right now is, how deep does the UCP corrupt care scandal go? And your official opposition will use every tool that we have in the toolbox to get to the bottom of this in this legislative sitting. We have already had conversations with the Auditor General, the RCMP, the Ethics Commissioner, and we are calling clearly for a judicial-led public inquiry into this government-wide scandal. Now today, when we go into the legislature, we will be asking very tough questions. Right at this very moment, our members on the Public Accounts Committee are demanding that the Health Ministry come forward to answer questions. And we will be watching to see whether UCP backbenchers will toe the Premier's office line, or will they agree to prioritize accountability. In question period, we will be demanding answers. We will also be moving for an emergency debate, one that requires unanimous consent to proceed. And I can assure you that all New Democrat caucus members will be voting for that emergency debate into the corrupt care scandal. We will also, through our questions, be holding every minister to account for, again, what is increasingly looking like a government-wide scandal. We will be asking every minister about the allegations. We will be leaving no stone unturned, because Albertans deserve answers. Now, we know that this government, not only mired in scandal and completely distracted, they are not focused on what Alberta priorities are. And they've shown that with their list of initial bills. And so we will continue to hold them accountable in a way that we have not been seeing, with the Premier avoiding media questions for weeks on end at the start of this scandal. This session, you will hear from us repeatedly that the UCP must get out of the way and fully cooperate with the judge-led public inquiry. We will continue to ask those tough questions, and we will respond to the legislation as they introduce it. But we've already seen them telegraph those wrong priorities. They are not focused on jobs and affordability. They've been ignoring the highest inflation in the country and stagnant wage growth. They are wasting taxpayer money with bloated contracts. And we will be raising these points of debate on the matter and looking for the UCP to stop pandering to extremists. No one in Alberta beside the UCP base is looking for legislation that would make Jordan Peterson happy. Instead, they want to see improvements to public health care, education, protecting our eastern slopes from coal mining, and investments in housing. Alberta's New Democrats will keep fighting for what matters to Albertans: better health care, stronger public education, real solutions that make life more affordable. No matter what the UCP does or tables in that House, you can count on the official opposition to make that case for ethical, competent government and public services that Albertans deserve. With that being said, I would like to turn it over to Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi.
Well, thanks very much, Christina. So from now until Victoria Day, the legislature will be in session. Spring will come to Alberta, but I'm sorry to say, under this government, spring will not come for Albertans. We will have some 20 government bills, not one of which will do a single thing to improve the lives of Albertans. Meanwhile, we will have a government that will continue to duck and weave and try to avoid this ever-increasing scandal. I want to highlight two things about that, and then we'll go to questions. The first is, if you are a political watcher, you know that in any UCP government, you got to watch the Guthrie decks. The Guthrie Dex has hit minus 40. Go, folks, ask Jason Kenney what happens when the Guthrie Dex goes that low. Also, for those of you who are real legislature watchers, I'll just point out, with Minister Guthrie no longer a minister, who will answer questions for Minister Matt Jones? We haven't seen the Minister of Jobs, Economy and Trade in the legislature in months, largely because this government doesn't care about jobs, economy and trade. So given that, the real issue here, though, and I can talk more if you like in questions about Minister Guthrie's resignation, what that might mean. But I heard something really interesting from the Premier yesterday. The Premier said she's opposed to a public inquiry, she's opposed to getting to the bottom of the corrupt care scandal because she doesn't want a, quote, witch hunt, unquote. Well, if there's anybody who knows about witch hunts, that would be Danielle Smith. We know that she goes after her political enemies, she goes after people who disagree with her, and even in the statement of claim at the center of the corrupt care scandal, it is alleged that the Premier's office and political offices hired private detectives, hackers, and investigators to go after public servants who disagree with them. They went so far, allegedly, as to tell the CEO to fire hardworking paramedics and other public servants just because they disagreed with this government. So it seems Danielle Smith loves the witch hunt, except when she might be the witch. So quite seriously, we must get a judge-led public inquiry, number one. Number two, if we really want to know what happened, let's ask the people who were in the room. This government must release the fired board members and any fired AHS employees from the gag orders that they were put under when they were fired so they can tell the public, they can tell Albertans the truth about what happened. We lost a minister today, and I will tell you that every single member of that UCP caucus today is asking themselves, do I want to be the one holding the bag when the music stops? Do I want to be around when the RCMP starts arresting people? Or do I want to stand up for what's right now? Albertans have an Alberta New Democrat caucus that is standing up for what's right. And I would urge all of those elected officials across the aisle to also stand up for what's right. We lost a minister today, but we need another minister to go. It's unclear to me, it makes no sense to me, why in the world the Premier is defending this health minister, the worst health minister in Alberta's history, who has presided over chaos in the system and worsening health care for everyone, while she's letting the rest of her government crumble around her. So Premier, the answers are always the same. Release the people from gag orders. Initiate a real judge-led public inquiry. Fire the health minister. Step aside while this is going on. You want this to go away? There's only two ways this ends, and that is your best choice right now. We'll take questions now.
Thank you, everyone. If you have questions, please. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please state your name and your outlet. If you're on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. We have time for one question and one follow-up.
Thanks, Shailan Skolsky with CTV News. I'm hoping you can tell me a little bit more about every tool in the toolbox that you plan to use, and what can you tell us about the conversations that you've had with the AG, the Ethics Commissioner, and the RCMP on this issue?
So, as we go into the legislative session, as the official opposition, we have the opportunity in question period each day to ask questions directly of the Premier and the ministers. Now, I will admit that the official opposition does not control the quality of the answers that we get back, but that is where their accountability to Albertans is what should come into play. So we will be asking those questions through question period. We will be sharing more about the stories and the information we've seen through member statements. And of course, we will have the opportunity to ask questions through bill debate. Today, we will be introducing Shadow Minister Sarah Hoffman an emergency debate to talk about the corrupt care scandal under a mechanism called Standing Order 42, which requires unanimous consent. If all members of the government caucus agree, we will be able to have a debate on these issues. And so that is one of the things we are looking for. And then beyond, in the legislative chamber, committees. like the Public Accounts Committee, has the ability to call ministries like the Ministry of Health forward. But again, because the government holds a majority of seats on that committee, we do require private members on the government side to understand how important this accountability is and to make the right decisions. So those are just a few of the tools we will be using. Regarding the calls that we have made, I can simply say that certainly we know that the Auditor General, the Ethics Commissioner, and the RCMP have all received our official complaints and acknowledged those. And I think that's about all I can say at this point, but we look forward to hearing more from them. That being said, I have to reiterate, a judge-led public inquiry called by this government with Premier Daniel Smith standing aside while it takes place is what we need to get to the bottom of the corrupt care scandal.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just as a follow-up, just further to, I guess, what were your messages to the UCP MLAs and ministers who are hearing the news of the resignation today and the concerns about the allegations that have been brought forward in the past few weeks?
Well, I'd be really surprised if for the last month, every UCP member and every UCP minister hasn't been asking themselves, what really happened here? When we hear the allegations and the rumors, when we read the statement of claim, something shady is going on. And what we heard from former Minister Guthrie today is that he's known about these rumors for some time. And he's been pushing the Premier and Cabinet to do something. Yet we have a Premier who claims she heard about these things for the first time when she read them in the newspaper. That belies belief. So one of two things is going on. Either the Premier is not being straightforward when she says she didn't know about any of this, even though it was discussed at Cabinet, even though the Executive Council that she chairs fired the AHS board. She apparently didn't ask why they were being fired. So that kind of belies any belief. But let's take her at face value. Let's say that the Premier had no idea what was going on. Well, then we have a Premier who has no idea what's going on. And Albertans deserve a Premier who knows what's going on, who knows what her Chief of Staff is doing, who knows what her ministers are up to, who creates a system where ministers can say to her, hey, there's these really troubling allegations, there's an investigation going on. So either we have a Premier who doesn't tell Albertans the truth, or we have a Premier who has no idea what it means to be the Premier and has no idea what her own government is doing. Both of those are bad.
Bonjour, Emmanuel Prestovet, Radio-Canada. En français, le ministre de l'Infrastructure Guthrie a démissionné ce matin. Qu'est-ce que ça vous dit sur les relations à l'intérieur du Conseil des ministres et du cabinet? Est-ce que les gens commencent à perdre confiance envers le gouvernement?
Oh, on a déjà perdu confiance dans ce gouvernement. Et ce que le ministre Guthrie a fait aujourd'hui, il a dit qu'il y a beaucoup de temps qu'il avait des problèmes avec des corruptions, avec des rumeurs sur procurement dans le gouvernement. Et ça me dit que chaque membre du UCP doit présenter une question à eux-mêmes. Est-ce que je veux être ici? Est-ce que c'est le gouvernement que je veux faire partie? Et si la réponse est « moi, je veux être dans un gouvernement éthique, un gouvernement compétent », peut-être ça sera des questions très, très difficiles.
Follow up in English. President Trump posted on Truth Social last night that he wants to get Keystone XL built now. Daniel Smith is pretty favorable to that idea. Do you think that the Keystone XL pipeline should be built?
Well, the challenge here, so to back up, for many years, if you went to the front page of the employee intranet of TransCanada Pipelines, you would see a video of me explaining the importance of the Keystone XL pipeline and Energy East. And TransCanada asked its employees to watch that video because they thought I explained the case better than anybody else. So these are projects that I've pushed for a really long time. The problem here is that the UCP government's massive incompetence on this issue has probably soured the well very significantly. So we had a UCP government that you'll recall wasted $1.5 billion of taxpayers' money on a corporate handout to TransCanada when it was clear that Keystone XL was going to be cancelled. And the UCP went in as the first creditor, so the Albertan taxpayers were the first ones to lose their shirts when that project got cancelled, which at that point everyone knew it was going to be cancelled. Now we've got a situation where, sure, we would love to build Energy East, we would love to build Northern Gateway, we would love to build Keystone XL, but there's no companies that want to build these things. South Bow, the spin-off of TC Energy, has said they have no interest in reviving Keystone XL. We've heard from Enbridge that they have no interest in reviving Northern Gateway. And that's because of the incompetence of governments, provincial and federal, in managing critical infrastructure projects like this. Now, we could spend some time wondering about President Trump, on the one hand saying he wants to have domestic production, drill baby drill, and on the other hand wants to build a pipeline whose only purpose is to bring Canadian oil into the US market. But I have given up trying to figure out the president's motivations.
Thank you. We'll go to questions online. Lisa from CP, you should be good to go.
Christina, you quoted Minister Guthrie at the beginning of the news conference saying, "I'm not going to stand by and see potential corruption exist within government." I'm wondering what document you're quoting there. Is that the letter that he sent to Cabinet initially earlier this month, or what document is that?
I believe that the quote from Minister Guthrie that was in my speaking remarks today was from today's letter of resignation.
Okay,
We'll find it for you, Lisa.
Yeah, we're happy to follow up to make sure that the quote is accurate.
yeah, great, thanks.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
No, I'm good for now, thanks.
Fantastic. Taking a look around the room, is there any more questions?
Round two. Come on up, Danielle.
Who do you think should replace Peter Guthrie as infrastructure minister?
Oh man, you know, sometimes I have sympathy for the Premier, not very often, but one of the things I have sympathy for is who is she going to find in that caucus of not exactly the highest performing parliamentarians I've ever seen in my life to replace the guy who wore his Christmas suit in the legislature and made extraordinarily unfunny jokes about people's human rights. So, you know, man, oh man, oh man, she's got a real challenge trying to find someone who can focus in on very important things. Because let's be clear, the Minister of Infrastructure builds schools and hospitals, and we need folks to make sure the procurement is clean. We need folks to make sure we're getting the best value for taxpayer dollars. And in a government that makes up its capital budget as it goes along, we need a Minister of Infrastructure who's willing to say no to the Premier and say we are actually going for clean builds that provide jobs for Albertan workers. We're not giving out contracts to your friends and buddies. We're not spending more than the taxpayers need to spend. So she's going to have to find someone who's honest, who's competent, and who's ethical. And those are things that we don't see much of here in Alberta. We need ethical and competent government now.
Did you gain some respect from Minister Guthrie today? Because he did step down from a government he thought was acting wrongfully.
You know, in politics, you always want to guess at people's motivations. And the number of people who I've talked to already this morning have said, oh, he did it because the same thing he did to Jason Kenney. He's trying to get more power in a future government when Danielle Smith's not the Premier. Or people who say he did it because he himself wanted to get out before his own department was implicated. None of that matters. What actually matters is the fact that we have someone who's standing up and saying, look, if Albertans are concerned about this issue, they deserve an investigation. And on that front, you know, we stand with him in saying, call that judge-led public inquiry now.
We have one more question online. Your line is open.
Oh, don't hear anyone.
Okay, if you have a question, please message us and we will be able to answer it separately. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Happy first day of school. Oh, you're back. We can hear you now.
Sorry about that. It's Brian Labby at CBC in Calgary.
Hi, Brian.
Post media is reporting a $1 billion tax cut is coming on Thursday. We unfortunately have not been able to confirm this as of yet, but just wanted to know what your thoughts are on this apparent policy move.
Yeah, sure. We will have a lot more to say on Thursday when we see the actual budget. But what Post Media is reporting today is that there will be a modest fiscal cut for people, at the same time a massive deficit. And what we very clearly know about this is that if Post Media's reporting is accurate, this decision was made in the last 2 weeks. That's why Danielle Smith didn't go to Washington. That's why Ms. Smith didn't go to Washington, because she was rewriting the budget. And she was not rewriting the budget because she's concerned about tariffs. She was not rewriting the budget because the fiscal environment has changed or she's trying to give Albertans what they're asking for. She was rewriting the budget to change the channel in the hopes that Albertans could be bribed into forgetting about corrupt care by being given a few dollars a month as the UCP government's single and only affordability measure for Albertans. Well, whatever that tax cut is, it pales in comparison to how much more we're paying for auto insurance, to how much more we're paying for utilities. And Albertans deserve a government that's honest, ethical, and competent, and a government whose budgets are honest, ethical, and competent. Do you have a follow-up, Brian?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.